Unfortunately, we have to take a trip into the diseased mind of one Joy Reid. Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets. And today, I have to do it to you. I'm sorry, but it's necessary. Every so often, we get a piece of content that is instructive. It's a teachable moment, as I like to say. And so I want to take the time to do that. The content in question is one Joy Reid, everyone's favorite political commentator. She's brimming with insights and wisdom. So she had an interview with this representative of Moms for Liberty. Now, Moms for Liberty is an outfit that seeks to keep graphically sexually explicit content out of public school libraries. And until 5 minutes ago, the premise of what Moms for Liberty is trying to do was self-evident. Like everyone with common sense and a decent moral compass knew and knows that it's not appropriate to sexualize children and to expose children to sexual content before an appropriate age. But apparently, the modern left doesn't agree with that. They want, the transgenders to twerk in front of your child at a so-called library. What do they call it? Drag queen story hour? Yeah, whatever that is. Just an excuse to sexualize your children. And the rot runs deep, as we will see in this series of videos, because Joy Reid exposes the moral bankruptcy of the modern left. But I want to teach you how to think about these things, because it can be frustrating to watch, and you know intuitively that it's wrong, but oftentimes it's difficult to put words to what exactly is wrong with it. So we're going to take a moment to explore some of the common errors of the modern left when they make these sort of arguments for why we should, sexualize our children. Let's listen.
The fact is, George M.
Oops.
LGBTQ kids, do they have parental rights?
Every parent, Joy. Every parent means every parent has the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children.
And liberal parents? Do liberal parents have those rights as well?
All parents, sure.
So let me point you to some statistics, because the question becomes then who gets to decide what all kids get to read? The Washington Post took a look at about 1,000 plus book challenges that were filed, and they found that they were filed nationwide by just 11 people. Each of these people brought 10 or more challenges against books in their school district. Together, these serial filers constituted 6% of all book challengers, but they were responsible for 60% of filings. In Florida, Tampa Bay Times, they found that of roughly 1,100 complaints recorded in Florida since July 2022, we're talking about more than 700 just from two counties. Escambia in the Western Panhandle and Clay County. Together, those are less than 3% of the public school enrollment, 600 of those complaints, 2 people. Why should 13 people get to decide what books tens of thousands of children get to read?
Now, first thing we need to know when we see this sort of content, this is a common tactic of anyone who has a disingenuous argument or a position that they cannot defend outright, which is they want to shift the framing of the argument, right? They want to make the argument about something that is not really core to the actual point that the opposition is making. And so instead of course, making a positive case for why children need to be exposed to sexually explicit content, she shifts the conversation to there's only a handful of people filing requests to have books removed. Why is that good? Well, if that's the way we're doing it, then this is a meaningful question to ask. Do you think that people on the left like Joy Reid have the same energy, for example, when gay people were going into Christian establishments and demanding service, demanding that the Christians violate their own conscience by providing them with services that they object to, baking a gay wedding cake or providing photography for a gay wedding? They knew for a fact that the people would object to it consciously, and they went in there with the express intent to essentially harass and to have these people's businesses destroyed. But it was only a handful of people doing that. I mean, how many people in the LGBTQ community were actually doing stuff like that? And did they not have many alternatives that they could have gone to? They went to those places expressly for with the goal to disrupt those people's businesses or to force them to violate their conscience. Do you think Joy Reid would be defending the Christian baker because only a handful of people were doing that? I don't think so. So one of the first things you'll see is that they don't make arguments from principles that can be generalized. So in this case, this is special pleading. So the point that she's making here, although it seems impressive, there's only 13 people just controlling what tens of thousands of people should watch or should read. That's an irrelevant point because the principle is what is appropriate for children, and that's what the conversation should be about. Let's let her answer.
Well, I'm thinking it's probably because those 13 people saw what some of the content was in the books. I mean, explicit, graphic, sexual content. And I'm happy to talk about some of that content if you'd like to.
Correct. She shifts the argument back to where it needs to be, which is this is about the content. Now, if I show you the content and you still think that it's appropriate for children, then I would have some objections about your actual judgment. And this is what many people have attempted to do. What you may have seen many parents, for example, reading some of these books at school board meetings. And it's quite jarring to see this sort of sexual content that they allow. Now, this is about somewhere around a 12-minute interview, and I encourage you to watch the entire thing. I will try to link the interview in the description, but I just want to hit a few highlights. Next, Joy is going to, you saw her early in that last clip talk about this the rights of liberal and LGBTQ parents, which is another way she tries to shift the narrative. But let's take a dive into this because I think this is instructive.
Yeah, I guess.
And so what you find is the keywords that you find, the N-word, anything, words like you just used, when you'll get out of context passages from the book. And then based on that, Moms for Liberty members are going to places like Broward County School Board meetings, reading out of context passages from these books, and then demanding that the school board remove them.
So what's
that is the way.
Yeah.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read?
Okay, so now she's making what we would call, it's a formal logical fallacy, which we would call an argument from authority, right? Do you have the proper authority? Do you have the proper expertise? You know, such and such, whenever you quote a so-called expert in a field, or something to that effect, they think that that's some sort of trump card. It's like, oh, well, I have experts. Experts making an appeal to authority or some sort of content or subject matter authority is not an argument. So just to give you a little bit more context, she was basically Joy Reid was making a reference to a website where parents can go to and they can search keywords and see where that keyword might be shown in a specific book. And so she's trying to say they're reading this information out of context, right? And you'll see this lady, I think, answers it well, that the context doesn't matter. But I just wanted to point out the logical fallacy appeal to authority. Let's listen to her response.
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm going to answer
Please
for you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school?
And I have to give this lady a round of applause. She asked the obvious question because the answer is obvious, that there is no context in which it is appropriate. This is insane, right? But Joy Reid is she's fighting for her life here, so let's let her answer.
That's my question to you. Tell me what the context around.
Did you see that little that little dumbfounded look she has on her face? She's like, she knows she doesn't have an answer. Watch how she deflects.
The strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No, we're talking about public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
Well, who is...
She's not going to answer it. Spoiler.
Who's the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Are Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just gave me very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
She goes back to the appeal to authority. The name of the, let's say the name of the person in the book is Jason. Let's say it's Mitch. Let's say it's Jonathan. How does this matter? I mean, this stuff is completely insane. All right. You know that people are, you know that they're reaching and grasping for the wind when they start deflecting and doing this. And you shouldn't let people off the hook. I thought she did a great job answering asking that question, but I don't think this lady from Moms for Liberty, I don't think she held her to the fire like she should have. Let's continue.
It's the gentleman,
Hold on. Who's the main character in the book?
The main character is the author.
What's his name?
George, I believe, is his first name.
Because you're giving me very specific information that is.
You're asking me to remember the name of an author.
You
the
just
name of the
remembered
author
very
doesn't
specific names.
Joy.
Here's my question.
We're talking about
Here's my question.
You didn't answer my question.
No. I'm going to answer your
Great.
question.
I would love to hear that.
I'm going to answer your question. This is so pathetic.
Absolutely. Well, I'm interviewing you, and you're not interviewing me. So
this is a common retort, right? I'm interviewing you, and I'm the one who deserves to falsely frame this problem so that I can try to make a point that's irrelevant to the main topic. What she's forcing Joy to do, which should have been the only topic at hand, is to make a positive case for why it is good for kids to be exposed to explicitly sexual content. Why do our kids need that for their development? Go. It's not about anything else. And by the way, I would like to make another point. It is not even on this lady from Moms for Liberty. I should know her name. I wish I knew her name. What is her name here? Let's see if I can find it here. It is Tiffany Justice. Oh, aptly named. Tiffany Justice. Tiffany should say, I don't even have to explain my view. My view is the default view. We have understood for time immemorial that we shouldn't expose our kids to sexual content too early. That's why we don't tell our kids when they're like 5 years old, where they ask, Mom and Dad, where do babies come from? We answer that question kind of gingerly, right? We carefully, it's shrouded in all kinds of euphemisms that aren't really true. Because why? Because that's not appropriate for that age. And so I don't have to explain why I'm trying to preserve the standard. You're the one that is pushing for kids to be exposed to content that previously we would never have allowed. So now, if the onus is on you, make a positive case. Of course, she won't do that.
Let's just make sure it's a conversation, okay?
Okay, great.
So what I'm saying to you is that as you are not an expert, in this book,
Once again, appeals to authority, an irrelevant point.
You don't have to be an expert to know that
hold on a
dildos
second.
aren't
One
appropriate
moment,
for public
one moment.
school. I mean, come on, let's get real.
This book is a full context story, as you said, of the author's experience. Why is it your right, or a Moms for Liberty activist's right, to say that a parent who wants their child to have access to this book, which gives a personal experience of this author, why doesn't a liberal parent, for instance, or a parent of an LGBTQ kid, why don't they have a right for their child to just have access to this book? Why is it your right to say they can't?
All right. Now this is fascinating. Now this is where I'm gonna interject here. Rights. This is very interesting. People on the left like to throw these terms around, but they have a very technical meaning, and they basically infuse these texts with meanings that are different from what are normal. Rights come from God. This people don't want to acknowledge this, and what the modern left's position can be kind of wrapped up into and kind of described succinctly is that they're basically people struggling against God, right? They're trying to throw off what they perceive as the shackles of the God paradigm. But the problem is that every time they try to throw off the so-called shackles of the God paradigm, they create more problems than they solve, because they're making appeal to things that they can only have if the God that they hate and are struggling against doesn't exist. So you don't have any rights, okay? You don't have any rights apart from God. So the rights come from moral values and duties, for which there are no specific moral values and duties. If we're talking about just what everyone's opinions are, then everyone has the right to express their opinion. I think people shouldn't be able to expose their kids to sexually explicit content, no matter what their opinions are. Do you think that it is, for example, appropriate for the state to prosecute a parent if a parent deliberately introduces their child to PON, to corn, you know what I'm trying to say. I think there's a case to be made that that's child abuse. You're talking about parental rights. Here's a more fundamental question. And here's an example, once again, of what I call special pleading. Because there's a scenario where we could see Joy Reid taking exactly the opposite position. Say if you had a liberal parents, for example, or a conservative parents who had a child that came to them and said, "Mom and Dad, I'm trans, right? I think I'm in the wrong body, and I think I need so-called gender affirming care." But then the conservative parents said, "You know what? We're not going to do that. We're not going to let you socially transition. We're not going to give you gender affirming care. We're not going to do any of that. What you're going to do is you're going to go by your given name. You're going to dress in the appropriate clothes for your gender. And as a matter of fact, we're going to take you to our pastor for counseling because you need to understand that you need to accept the reality of how God made you, because there is no version of reality where you are the wrong person. You have the wrong body." Do you think that Joy Reid would be now defending the so-called parental rights for parents to do with their kids whatever they want? No parent has the, quote, right to do whatever they want with their children and expose their children to whatever they want. Why? Because we have universal standards of morality that supersede people's personal preferences. And so those universal standards of morality, the question is, where do they come from? By what standard is Joy Reid making the claims that this woman doesn't have the, quote, right to affirm and to try to establish universal standards for what is appropriate for children? And so, with that said, Joy Reid has effectively made herself, she's exposed herself for the kind of the hack she is. And I just want to make one final point here, because this is something that I've been beating the drum of for years, which is that black women are the mascots for the liberal left. They can put these people on television and give them platforms where they make these indefensible, they have these indefensible positions. They say things that are completely asinine. They don't hold up under scrutiny. And anytime you come at them, right, they can say, "Oh, you're probably just racist and you're probably just a bigot." I thought this lady, Tiffany Justice, I thought she comported herself well, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Is this just another example of a very, in my opinion, kind of a low IQ Joy Reid being given a platform because she has the, quote, right political opinions and because she has black skin and the right gender? Is this an example of that? Or do you think she's making a valid point? Do you think our kids should be able to be exposed to sexually explicit content? I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Leave them in the comments. Until next time, friends, God bless you.